HannaTalk.
What is up, Bleach fans? Simon here. Welcome to HannaTalk. Hope you're all doing absolutely fantastic. If you're finding me for the first time, I do interviews and pop culture related stuff on my channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and be sure to click that bell if you want to find out the next video I do. Hope that everyone is doing absolutely fantastic. It is a beautiful sunny day right here in Melbourne, Australia, or wherever you are in the world, of course. But to brighten the day up, I'm here with a really special guest. Now, he is an actor who is best known to fans as the voice of Shunsui Koraku from Bleach, but he's also played across a variety of shows and projects such as Naruto, Cowboy Bebop, Digimon, Dragon Ball, Pokemon, Ghost in the Shell, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Lupin the Third, Gundam, Sailor Moon, Transformers, and much more. Please welcome the amazing Steve Kramer.
Hold on, I'll get him. I'm sure he's here somewhere. Oh wait, oh it's me. Okay, fine. I'll do the interview.
Welcome to my channel, Steve. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm doing good. I I'll tell the audience. I wrote Simon at the last minute. I said, "Is this on camera or is it voiceover? If it's voiceover, I don't have to shower." By the time he wrote me back, I was already in the shower. He says, "Oh yeah, it's voiceover." So I'm at least a good smelling voiceover artist.
That's true. Well, they haven't invented smell-o-vision yet, so
That's right.
we wouldn't be able to tell the difference. But no, that's fantastic though. Now, let's get right into obviously the very first question I ask every first guest I have on. How did you get started in acting?
Well, it's interesting. I actually didn't start out as an actor in Los Angeles when I graduated. I graduated from UCLA, and I ended up working in production in here locally, and I worked in news for a while. I was a news assistant, and then I worked my way up to be a news producer. Um, and when that job ended, I went to work for another news organization, and I was the story editor or the assignment editor for a character named Baxter Ward, who's a local personality, news personality in Los Angeles. And when that ended, Baxter decided he wanted to run for political office here in LA, and he ran for county supervisor. So I quit my job and went to work for him as a political assistant. And then when he won, I ended up working as an assistant to a county supervisor. I did that for maybe a year or two, and then decided to get out. And I had some money saved up, and I thought, well, what do I want to do? And it turned out what I wanted to do was act. So I had done theater and stuff in school, and sounded interesting to me. So I got some pictures made and started going around looking for an agent, and eventually found one. And for a number of years, I was just doing on-camera acting. I did about 35 different TV shows, such as I had to write them down because I don't always remember, such as The West Wing, ER, Desperate Housewives, Malcolm in the Middle, Roseanne, Golden Girls. And I did some film too, Looking for Comedy in the Muslim World with Albert Brooks, and a couple of other things. So I did that for a while, but being an on-camera actor, being any kind of actor, is iffy. You get some work and then nothing happens, and then you get some work and then nothing happens, and so a lot of actors have to take subsistence jobs to survive because it's just too hard. So I answered an ad for they were looking for voice actors for a what I call a Japanese grunt film, which is a karate movie, which means they need people to do grunts, to do hits and take hits. And these movies are there's hardly any plot. It just goes from one fight to another fight. And so I started doing that, and I did it for a little while. I don't know how many months. And I met some other people who were doing that. And one thing led to another. And I got, as somebody had heard about, they were looking for voiceover actors to do some cartoon stuff from Japan. and I ended up doing that. I ended up getting some jobs there. And so, like I think the first series I ever did was Robotech, way back when. That was like in the 80s. I can't remember if it was late 80s or mid 80s, something like that. And that was the first big thing that I did. And I ended up being a writer and director on the series too after a while. Starting out as an actor, but then I seemed to have a facility for it. So they said, "Well, why don't you try writing some of these things?" And from there, the producer suggested that, you seem to have a good grasp of how this stuff works. Why don't you try directing too? So that's where it started, back in the mid 80s. It might have been early 80s. And I've been doing this now for, let's see, one, two, three. I've lost fingers. I don't have enough fingers to count. It's probably 40 years. I think I've been doing it
Wow.
for 40 years. Um, and actually it has slowed down. For me, actually for the whole industry in Los Angeles. All of the anime industry has decentralized, I'll say. It's not just being done in Los Angeles. And if it was done in New York, it wasn't done a lot. LA was really where the center of it was. But I think the producers realized that if they wanted to save money, they were going to have to go out of Los Angeles because the actors here cost more, frankly. They're better actors. They're more professional actors. They don't just do voiceover, they do on camera stuff too. And, at a certain point, those actors are going to demand more money. So I mean, we started out, oh my God, I think I started out doing this at $10 an hour. But we're talking 40 years ago, at least 40 years ago. So for $10 an hour, I could still eat hot dogs. That was about it. Hot dogs and popcorn. Um, but over time, we asked for more money, and little by little, they gave us more. But at a certain point, I think the producers realized that they could get it for less than what they were paying LA actors for, and so they took the work to Atlanta and Texas and other places. So some of the shows that I had worked on just picked up and left. Some of them still use us. Like we're doing the last episode or the last incarnation, I'll call it, of Bleach. We're doing Thousand Year Blood War, and I had worked on it. It was divided into three parts. So I worked on the first section, and then I think I wasn't really in the second section. And now my character Shunsui Kyoraku is coming back heavy in the third section. So I'm supposed to start recording again at the beginning of November through the end of the year, and I don't know if it'll go into the next year or not. Depends how much material there is. So I'm doing that, but there isn't a whole lot else that's been going on. And weirdly enough, what happened for a lot of us now, what's taken the place of actually having a lot of voiceover sessions is we're going to conventions because suddenly there's this huge demand for actors, voice actors, particularly in anime, to come to conventions and meet the fans and sign autographs. And that's sort of how many of us are making our living these days because there hasn't been a lot of new material to record.
Right.
So yeah.
No, that's absolutely fantastic. And just that entire thing you just gave off there, just from one question right there, was like, yeah, that's the end of the interview. See you guys.
Do you want shorter answers? Not so
No, no,
not
no.
so many words.
No, 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 no. That was fantastic though. That was amazing. And I think even you talking a little bit about how you've had so much experience in a lot of different parts of the entertainment industry, not just in the acting part of it, but also working behind the scenes as well. How
Yeah,
important do you think it is for anybody, whether like that started out in the industry, like from what like back during your time in the 80s, but also a lot of upcoming actors in the here and now, especially with how much the industry has changed so much with the amount of technology and social media at our disposal, how important do you think it is for a lot of actors, no matter old or new, to like immerse themselves in a lot of different parts of the entertainment industry.
Well, I think for anybody that wants to be an actor, you need to develop contacts within the entertainment industry. Unfortunately, that's just the name of the game. It's never changed. It was that way when I started, and it's still that way. It might be that way in a lot of different businesses. I just haven't been, involved in a lot of stuff except show business. But show business in particular, you end up meeting people, becoming friends with people, and social groups tend to start recommending you for things when they have something, and vice versa. If you have something, you're going to tend to invite your friends to audition for it and to work on it, as opposed to total strangers. So it is a clubby kind of a business, but people do survive doing it. I think even on camera, you're going to need representation at some point. In voiceover, not as much, particularly in this end of voiceover. But I have a voiceover agent, and I audition for projects, for commercials, and for other for full animation, original animation projects and things like that. I don't usually get anime auditions from her because I have better contacts than she does in that regard. But I'm still out there auditioning for things. So the back when I started, it turned out that it was a social group that was able to start recommending each other for projects as people heard about them or started working on things. In general, though, I would say most people need to get an agent. That's usually the trick, an agent or a manager or both. They're going to have contacts that you'll never get. They're going to hear about projects and auditions that you'll never hear about. So, there's a reason why there's a business of agencies and managers. They're the ones that hopefully will get you in places that you can't get into yourself. So, one of the big things that people who come into town and start out in this business usually start taking classes. From the classes, they hear about or get recommended to representation, meaning agents and managers. And from there, they start going out and auditioning and possibly booking things. So there's a step-by-step kind of thing for people starting out. But one of the big tricks is to get representation. And I
Um,
encourage people to take classes because uh, you will make contacts. You will hear about things from class because you've got a social group of people that are all trying to do the same thing you're trying to do, trying to get hired. And they'll hear about things, and through them, you'll hear about things. And most managers and agents really want you to have some training um, before you go out there. It's a little harder than it looks. you know, People think, oh yeah, I'm good looking. I can just go out there and well, sometimes that works. A lot of times it doesn't. You have to have a little bit of discipline and training behind you.
Absolutely. No, I think that's definitely true in that regard. And especially as you were discussing about earlier, how it used to be that kind of thing where LA was kind of like the big spot for a lot of really big productions to be part of and everything. And also like in the case of live action work, but also in the case of voice acting, where it was like LA, New York, Dallas in particular, where that was really hitting it big at the time.
In
Now,
Atlanta,
obviously, and it still is, of course, but
yeah.
now, obviously, because of the amount of social media and technology at our disposal and everything, you don't necessarily need to be living in those locations to try and hitting it off in that same sort of way. And also at the same time, we're also starting to get a lot of international productions coming to different parts of the world, as you said, as you once said about before. Like it wasn't just spread out to America, but we're also starting to get a lot of that occurring in Australia as well.
Are you? The anime producers are coming down there and casting people.
That'd be pretty cool, actually. That'd be really cool to see that. But
Huh.
yeah, but I know for a fact, and I was actually talking to Brian Beacock about this, your fellow co-star in Bleach, and a whole range of other stuff, where he was talking about with the animation and the video game strike that's been occurring this year, and last year when we had the actors and writers strikes last year, that a lot of the stuff, a lot of the big productions. that were occurring in Hollywood at that time have now started to spread out and kind of go to different locations in that sense because of how much Hollywood has started to, I guess, for lack of a better word, fall apart. Just because of
Well,
how.
they're decentralizing to some extent. I mean, the back in the day, and I'm saying 40 years ago and beyond that, when movies were uh, in the 30s and 40s and 50s, there was just the studios. If you wanted to become a star or you wanted to have regular work in film and television, it was all happening at the studios and at the television networks. So there were three networks, and there were probably, I don't know, six or seven major studios. And so most of the work was through there. But as time has gone on, everything has started to decentralize. And even the networks and the studios are not as powerful as they used to be. Now you've got companies like Netflix and Apple with Apple Plus and all of that that are doing the productions that basically the studios used to do. The studios are still around. They're just uh, not as big and powerful as they used to be because they
Mm,
used to run the business. I mean, MGM and Universal and Warner Brothers and all of that. That was where the business was. There wasn't anything else. And then eventually TV networks came along, CBS, NBC, and ABC, and they started doing some of the production, but they also used the big studios to do their productions too. And now that's all changed. As you say, it's decentralized. A lot of the production can happen anywhere, but the facilities, the basic infrastructure still exists here in Los Angeles, and it's being used. I mean, my understanding is that the sound stages here in town are mostly being booked up. They're mostly in production. They may not all be at the same lots. They might not all be at Warner Brothers or Universal, but they are still basically here. But they also are decentralized. Warner Brothers can go anywhere they want and shoot. They don't have to shoot here. Um, but I something's happening here that is surprising me, and I'm not sure I understand what's going on exactly. When I drive from where I live, which is near Universal City, Universal Studios, and when I drive into Burbank or anywhere out there, which I have to do regularly for just shopping and other things, I'm passing the old back lot at Warner Brothers, which used to have their suburban streets where they would have, I'll call it Leave It to Beaver streets because that's basically what it was. You'd have like neighborhoods with houses and lawns and streets and stuff, and they would shoot there. They didn't have to go out into the actual world and shoot in somebody's backyard. They tore that all down. They tore it all out about 6 months ago. It had been there for decades, and they're putting up sound stages. They're building a bunch of sound stages, like maybe 15 of them. And as you drive along the streets fronting that property, you can see all this stuff going up. They're huge sound stages. I mean, they're I'm just shocked at how big they are. But I'm sitting there and saying to myself, wait a minute, this is Warner Brothers, and Universal's done the same thing. They must know something I don't know about where production's coming. Why would they invest that kind of money if they weren't planning on shooting shows there? So I have a feeling that production is going to take off here in town more than it has been. I think we're going to see a blossoming of production because they're going to have the infrastructure. The stuff's going to be here.
That's true. I mean, I don't really know that much about what's going on with regards to that kind of thing myself. But what I will say though, now obviously as we know, as you were mentioning about, of course, with Warner Brothers, but in this year, because of the animation and video game strike, that started because of a whole number of issues over the last couple of years. Obviously, the whole AI discussion, even though AI technology has existed for a long time, and it only begun to get a lot more notice in the last couple of years. But amongst that, a whole range of other issues that have been part of the animation and voice and video game industry for such a long time, whether it's been pay rate, whether it's been like big film studios mistreating a lot of animated projects, especially through their streaming services. Like, how did you,
Right.
with obviously with regards to that, having worked across in both the live action and the animation sense, because of all the issues that have been occurring in those industries for the last few years, did you feel like as though like a strike was sort of bound to happen because of all the issues that have been occurring in the last few years?
Yeah, the bottom line, of course, is the pay rate. But as just as important to the actors and the future of this business is AI. Um, that was part of the underlying reason for the major theatrical strike that happened last year. And they got the studios and the networks to make concessions regarding AI. They can't just uh, use your image or something, create you through AI, and basically they don't need you. They've got you in a virtual form. Um, Even worse in voiceover. It's the technology is there. Granted, the technology isn't as developed as it will be, but it's not just in show business. I mean, AI is essentially a threat to every industry in terms of the workforce, and they're going to have to make some kind of agreement. They're going to have to find some accommodation with the workforce, or we're all going to be in big deep trouble. I mean, AI will take over, and the executives aren't going to care. They're still making money. It's it's a business. They call it a business, and show business is a business. So any way they can save money, um, they'll do. That's just reality. It's human nature. So the Screen Actors Guild had a they had to face this. This is the opening shot of it. They got some kind of concessions from the studios. I'm not actually as familiar with the details of that contract as I might have been. But my understanding is that the producers cannot just use your image, an AI version of your image, and just cut you out, basically. Um, the Screen Actors Guild and the other unions made sure that was included in the final contract language. They couldn't just be replaced by AI.
Right. No, that's definitely true in that regard and everything. And look, I may not necessarily have the answer to that question because I've been asked this question, or a lot of the actors I've had over the past couple of years have spoken about the whole AI thing of it all. And it's like, I will say to all the listeners out there, and I will say this, and I will say this to the day I die, I don't have the answer to that question myself. What I will say though, is I've been doing this channel for the last 10 years of my life. And I still continue to do this for a number of reasons, to show the side of myself that is outside of being a musician and music teacher, to be part of and support the pop culture community. But most importantly, and I will say this to the day I die, I do this to show my support and bring more attention to the animation and the voice acting industry. That's why I still do what I do.
Well, the fact is, I've only met you today, so I have no idea if you are you or if you are an AI version of you, because I wouldn't know. It's possible. I'm talking to a robot. It's possible.
I mean, you did voice in, of course, Pluto, which is, of course, I meant to be kind of a reimagining of the Astro Boy series. So
Um,
it'll be that it'll be like almost like it'll be almost like the reenactment of the Jetsons or something.
I'll be Elroy. I'll be Elroy if they let me.
But no, that's fantastic though. But
Yeah.
obviously looking back across at like all the live action stuff and the animated stuff that you've done, as you mentioned about whether it was guest starring on The Golden Girls or voicing characters in the Power Rangers to all the animated stuff that you've done, when you think back to any of the stuff that you did, like whether it was from an acting or a character or behind the scenes perspective, Are there any stories that really stood out to you?
Hmm. Stories that stood out to me. Huh. It's a hard one. I have to think about that a minute. I mean, there were stories that I was attracted to and fond of. I actually enjoyed Robotech, the first thing that I did very much. The genius behind Robotech was a guy named Carl Masick, who has passed away, unfortunately, at a very young age. I think he was in his late 40s. Um, Carl had a, excuse me, that's good for a voice guy. I'll start coughing in the middle of the interview. Uh, Carl had an idea to take three separate series. He took Macross, Southern Cross, and Mospeada, and he found them in Japan and he merged them together to make this series Robotech. Um, and I ended up working for him as a writer and also as an actor and a director. And I was always amazed at his facility that he could, take completely different series and find a common thread throughout them to make Robotech. It was one of the very first and most successful anime series that had come along. I'm not sure there was anything before that. I realized the other day that I was around before the anime industry really took off. So I've been there and watched the whole thing develop from the beginning. And again, we're talking about early 80s. And I'm amazed at how quickly it grew and how popular it became and how popular it continues to be. And you don't know till you go to these conventions how how much these shows really meant to people when they were growing up. You know, I go to them and I have prints that I've done of various characters from various series. Um, and people come up and they say, "Oh, this character, this series meant so much to me when I was growing up. It was like my life." And I say to them, "Well, how old were you when you first started watching it?" And they say 6 or 8. One guy said 35. I said, "Really?" That's when he got into it. They come up to you now and they are 35, and they have kids of their own, and you can just see what it means to them, what it meant to them, and what it means to them now to actually see the people, meet the people who put these things together.
Absolutely. No, that is fantastic. And and also speaking about a little bit on that is that with traveling to a lot of different comic conventions, like depending on which part of the world that you're in, what are some of the shows or like what are some of the shows that you're really surprised that fans would recognize you from, depending on which part of the world you're going to? Because I imagine that like in obviously living in LA that you'd be recognized a lot from like Bleach and like all the other shows that were really popular in America at the time. But geographically, every part of the world had an anime that you starred in personally that was like, wow, I didn't expect I'd get recognized for that or have a big fan base for that.
I actually haven't done too many things out of the country yet. I mean, there's obviously conventions that occur. Some of my friends have gone to London. They've gone to one of the guys. I don't, you know who Neil Kaplan is?
Yes. Yep.
Neil just went to Dubai uh,
Whoa.
to a thing, and when he was there, he was introduced to the Japanese actor who played his character originally in whatever show it was that he was there for. Um, so that's fascinating. I actually am interested when at some point in time I'm probably going to meet the Japanese actor that created the third Hokage in Naruto or Shunsui in Bleach. I think it'd be fascinating. One of the representatives that reps me for conventions is trying to put that kind of thing together where we can have the Japanese original and the American version of the same character. Um, I think that I'm dying to meet the guy that played Shun Sui. Uh, in Bleach when they were starting it out,
That'd be
or
pretty
even the
amazing to
third
see.
Hokage, the Hokage out of Naruto. And the other, those are the Naruto, Bleach, and Dragon Ball are the three major series that I get attention for. I played the original Dragon, Shenron, in Dragon Ball. Um, in fact, when somebody came up when I was first starting to sign autographs and stuff, and he came in the room with a wagon, a red wagon, like a kid's red wagon, stacked with these toys, these Funko Pops, and he wanted me to sign a bunch of the Shenron characters. And he said, when you sign it, underneath it, put OG. I said, what is that for? He said, original, the original voice of Shenron. So that was kind of interesting. Somebody said, what's the weirdest thing you've signed at one of these conventions? I said, a girl's leg. She she, she, she came up and she had leggings on that had the dragon on the leggings. And she said, would you sign my leggings? I said, okay. I said, I'm going to need a chaperone, though. I'm going to have a witness that all I'm doing is signing. That's it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think I'm looking forward to going out of the country to meet some of the fans there. But the most of all the stuff that I've done so far has been domestic. I eventually, I guess I'll be invited to New York Comic Con. They just had that in New York City this last weekend. Um, but anywhere in America, they're going to know the characters. They're going to know the projects. So everybody's thrilled to meet you when you go to these things. Actually, the actors are kind of thrilled to meet the fans too. From time to time, you do get some strange people that come up to you. I mean, there's no question about it. You get some people that are a little strange. They've been watching the show since they were 35, and they never got past 35. Um, but most of the people are just normal people that this was their childhood. When I was a kid growing up, I watched Howdy Doody, and I watched Mighty Mouse, and Rocky and Bullwinkle, and those things. Those people were my heroes when I was growing up. But I understand perfectly well why we would be heroes to this generation that was watching our show.
absolutely, and rightfully so, of course. And especially hearing that story about the girl who got the leggings signed. It's like the safest tattoo on the planet right there.
I don't know if I used, well, I was signing a legging, not her leg. I don't know if I used permanent a marker or not. I can't remember.
Right.
Probably as permanent as I could get.
I
You
think
know.
so as well.
I
But
ended up, when you go to these things, generally what you start out with are prints of some of the characters that you've done.
hmm,
But after a while, you start to branch out because you see how other people have come up with merchandise for things. And I was at an outdoor thing a year or two ago, and it was blazing hot. It was in downtown Los Angeles. It was 105 degrees out, and we were outside. I mean, I was in a booth, but I was outside. And at a certain point, I said to the guy that was with me, I said, I got to take a walk. This is killing me in here. He's got to get some air. And I'm walking around and I see this one booth, and this guy has beautiful black t-shirts with the dragon, Shenron dragon on them. It's a decal that's been built onto it. It's just gorgeous. And I said, I said, well, I'm the voice of Shenron. I need to buy one of these. He says, oh my God, yeah, yeah, yeah. Here, I think he gave me a discount. And then I went home and I thought to myself, what are you nuts? You should be selling these. Why, So I called the guy up and I said, I'd like to buy some of these to sell when I go around. He says, absolutely. I mean, he gave me a good price for them. So now I take T-shirts with me, and I was at one signing locally where the guy gave me 10 of the Hokage Funko Pops, just gave them to me. I said, my God, I mean, that's so generous of you because that's a lot of money for me eventually. So I take some of those with me to the conventions. Um, I've seen guys with just all kinds of merchandise that they come up with, which is good for the fans. I mean, instead of just buying a print or a comic book or something like that.
Absolutely. No, I mean, having been someone who's gone to a lot of conventions, most notably here in Australia, which for anyone
Yeah.
out there who doesn't know, I'll be sure to post links in the description below for the Comic Cons we have in Australia. We've got obviously Oz Comic Con, Supernova, Armageddon Expo, which is up in New Zealand, and
Uh-huh.
the latest one, which only just came out last year, called MetroCon as well.
That's,
So four really big, well, technically three really big conventions in Australia, and one up in New Zealand, of course. So, having been someone who's gone to meeting a lot of voice actors, which answers the question, people would ask me, why do you still go to comic conventions? No, number one reason, it's primarily to meet the voice actors. You guys are
yeah.
the real rock stars right there.
we I don't know from being a rock star. It is a strange feeling, for I mean, we're actors. We obviously are in it because we like the attention and we like the celebrity and all of that. But most of us don't think of ourselves as celebrities. We certainly didn't until these conventions started to happen. Now we're starting to see that that there is a following. I go to conventions where they've got uh, actual on-camera actors there in addition to voice people. And it's an entirely different world when you're an on-camera actor and you're one of these things. Basically, they suck all the air out of the room, and you're lucky if you get a bunch of people that want to come and get your autograph. There's a kid who I call him a kid. He's not a kid anymore. That I used to direct doing voiceover, who became one of the Power Rangers and Johnny Young Bosch, and he started out in voiceover, but we were working for Saban, and I guess they had one of the Rangers dropped out, or maybe they were expanding the number of Rangers. And Johnny heard about it and he said, "Hey, I want to audition," and he got the role. He's great. He's a good actor and he does a lot of great moves and stuff. But I go to conventions where Johnny's there, or maybe one of the other Rangers, or who knows what. Just all kinds of on-camera people, and you're just there's lines around the corner for them, and you're lucky if somebody comes up to your booth and wants an autograph. That's just reality. You're
Yeah,
just gonna
it
you know
is very much like that. I know I mean I've got like a number of stories about that where I think it was like I was lining up to meet Jodie Whittaker, who most people remember from the
uh-huh.
Doctor Who universe. And
Yeah,
like I think she was only in Melbourne, Australia for only one day. And we
yeah.
got into signing up. It was actually not for an autograph, it was for a picture, by the way, which of course takes the expression, take a picture, it'll last longer to a literal meaning.
Yeah, really.
Because you're literally like not even having to wait that long for a photograph and stuff. And it makes sense. You're in and out in less than like 5 seconds or something. Anyway,
Mm.
um, and I was like, you're not wrong about that. The lines are absolutely ridiculous. And I think even one story that comes to mind for me was when last year at Supernova, when I met Veronica Taylor, who most people remember as the original voice of Ash from the OG Pokemon series. And
Uh-huh.
just when Temuera Morrison, who plays Boba Fett from the Star Wars universe, was there at the time. It was one day I was lining up to meet Veronica Taylor at the time, and the lineup was going ridiculously slow at that stage. Obviously, because Pokemon was really, really famous, and
Yeah.
it still is. And Boba Fett's line or Temuera Morrison's line was absolutely crazy. And I signed up to get an autograph from him at first. I was like, yeah, no, that's never going to happen.
Well, at the thing I was at, that Johnny was there. Most of the voiceover people were miles away from where the on-camera people were. We could hear all the excitement. You could hear the roars and stuff. And I had a break at one point, so I kind of wandered over, and there's this big line for Johnny, and I kind of went past the line, and I walked up and I said, "Can you sign my hand? I would really appreciate it." He he looked up and he said, "Kramer, you son of a gun, get out of here." I just, can you put a permanent marker on my hand? I'd appreciate it.
No.
And the last thing I was at was LA Comic Con, and it was in two huge halls, and the voiceover people were in one hall, and the on-camera people were in another, and they had the whole cast from um, um, oh, what's I suddenly blanked on it. It's Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd, and what was the movie that was with the DeLorean? I'm sorry,
Back to the Future.
Back to the Future. It was they had the whole cast from Back to the Future in the other hall.
Wow.
So imagine, the length of the line for that. People come up to me and we chat and stuff while when I'm signing stuff. I was told that the line for Michael J. Fox, he didn't even look up. He just signed it next, signed it next, signed it next, because there was no time. He couldn't interact with anybody. It was just too many people. I've actually Miley Flanagan is the voice of Naruto. And Miley does extremely well at these things. There's always a big line for her stuff, and she makes quite a bit of money on these. I was told one of the other guys told me, he says, I don't feel guilty about getting the money for signing these things. It's like the residuals that we never got for doing the project in the first place, because most of it was non-union. So as far as he's concerned, it's what we should have gotten in the first place. He's
Right.
probably
That's true. No, but that's fantastic though. And also it's kind of funny hearing the story about like how the Comic Cons, as you're describing about from the ones in America, are kind of separated into the different parts. The on-camera stuff and the voice actor stuff. Actually, in Australia, and I'm remembering this, was when I went to MetroCon earlier this year, and they had Matthew Waterson from X-Men 97 and Bill Farmer, who's the voice of Goofy, and a whole range of other voice actors, mostly a lot of on-screen actors, but two or three voice actors is thrown in the mix as well. And Matthew Waterson was literally sitting right next to Brandon Routh from
oh,
Superman Returns and
yeah.
Legends of Tomorrow. So sometimes you get that mix of like the voice actors and the actors sort of in the same lineup where
Yeah.
it's not that clear distinction a little bit.
Well, it's amazing that most actors now are happy to do conventions, particularly if your career is not hot right now. If you're working and you're working on a series or you're doing movies, then you don't really, it's not important to go. But I think even casts of X-Men and stuff like that, I think even they go to these conventions. It's a whole business, it's a whole industry that they participate
Absolutely. No, that's absolutely true, and that's fantastic. And as I
in.
said before, like when I first started going to a lot of comic conventions, and I still obviously do to this day forward, is like when I first started, I would go primarily to meet the voice actors, and I still do. Like
Mhm.
you guys are the real rock stars, as far as I'm concerned, as far as and speaking on behalf of everyone else.
Did you just cut out?
So so
Okay.
yeah, so when it comes to a lot of the comic conventions now, I obviously go in a mix of like meeting the on-camera stuff and the voice acting stuff.
Right,
I
right.
go primarily to meet the voice actors such as yourself and anybody that would ever come to visit Australia. You guys are the real rock stars right there.
I'm willing to come visit Australia, but I have to be invited. I'm
I'll
afraid
definitely
they're gonna have to pay for the plane ticket. I'm sorry.
I'll do everything I can to make it happen. I'll try and pester like every comic convention to say, get this guy down here and get every one of the guests that I've ever had on this channel for the last 10 years, get them down to Australia because that would
Yeah,
be amazing.
yeah, it would be fun. I enjoy meeting the fans wherever they are. And the fans are really basically the same, whether they're from small towns or big cities or this country or that country. It's people that just enjoy the heck out of the material, the anime industry. Just what we do. Um, yeah, there's actually a trick to the writing of anime that you probably didn't know about. Most people don't. There's actually a thing. There's a thing called. Right, Steve. You bring the subject up, and then you can't think of it. Uh, there's lip flaps that happen when you're speaking. In English, there's only three letters in the English language where your lips touch when you say the letters. Can you think of which they are?
Ooh, okay.
Put you on the spot now.
All right. Yeah, my dad obviously being an English teacher, he's gonna rip me to shreds if I get this wrong.
Uh-oh, uh-oh.
All right. Okay. All right.
I
I'm
can
trying
tell
to
you,
think.
I'll give you the first one.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
B.
oh, B. Yes.
B.
Okay. I
Your
was gonna
lips
say,
touch when you say the letter B, whether you say
yes.
bebop or whatever. When you say the letter B within a word, your lips touch. That these are called speech dynamics. That's the word I was couldn't remember.
Hmm.
The next one that where your lips touch is the letter M,
M.
m,
Yeah.
m. And the
Aha.
last one is the letter P, pa, pa. And those are called in speech dynamics. Those are called labials, which sounds dirty, but that's what they're called. And then there's two letters in the English alphabet where your lower lip hits your front teeth when you say the letter.
Mm.
And I won't make you guess on that one. The first one is F. You say F, your
F.
lower lip hits your teeth, F.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other one is V,
V.
F and V. Yeah. So those have an equally dirty word. I can't remember now what they are, but to describe them. But speech dynamics. When you're looking at a cartoon, and the mouth is just opening and closing, blah 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 blah. If you can come up with language that sort of matches where the mouth hits, which is like your lips are touching, after a while in English, the audience will stop watching the mouth and start listening to the dialogue. But it's so hard that I only know three other people. I used to be able to do it. I guess I still could, except I don't write much anymore. But I only knew three other people that could do that and do it successfully. There may be more people now that can do it that I just haven't met, don't know. But it's a trick, and eventually the audience stops. They just stop thinking about the fact that it's one language into a different language mouth, and they just start watching the show, and listening to the dialogue. So
Yeah, well, I mean, I've watched like behind the scenes work of like a lot of the anime voice actors, like
yeah,
voice matching and also doing the dubbing stuff as well. Like the most notable example was with Brina Palencia, who most people remember as Chopper from the One Piece series, but also from Fullmetal Alchemist and a whole range of other shows. And
uh,
watching her like play this particular scene from one of the series, it was like, wow, that's crazy.
yeah.
I could see exactly what was happening in that moment there, in that sort of sense of like matching the lip flaps and making sure that it fits in and it's like it's hitting at the right spot and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah. I
I
mean,
can see what you
mostly
mean by that.
mostly what we've been asked to do is just start and stop on time. That's fairly important. Don't start talking before the lips open, before the mouth opens. Uh, that was where we started, and then things. I was taught by somebody that understood the speech dynamics. So we got to the point at a certain point in the development of the art where it was very close, particularly in live action. When I would do live action movies and stuff, write and direct those, it was extremely important to try and get as close as you could because it took the audience out of the show when the lips didn't come close to matching. It's
Right.
it's like watching bad dubbing or something.
Mm.
Guy starts talking, and then a couple of minutes later, his mouth starts moving. Everybody's seen that kind of stuff, I'm sure. But it
I
takes you it takes
certainly
you out of
have.
the show. Yeah, it takes you
No,
out of the show.
absolutely. No, that's definitely true in that regard. Now,
Yeah.
let's get on into like your most notable roles here. But actually, before we get into that, just to talk about a couple of the roles that was my intro to your work, and actually some really big deep cuts from like your career was in fact Rurouni Kenshin. We've played numerous characters across the entire series, but most notably as Dr. Gensai. But the other show as well the other couple of shows that really stood out to me was from the 2003 Cyborg 009 series, where you played Cyborg 006, and also Little Snow Fairy Sugar as the Elder, because those three shows in particular were the biggest ones that premiered in Australia at that time.
I'm just looking at my resume. My resume is people can't see this because I can see it and you can see it because we're on live, but in voiceover they can't see it. It's 8 pages single spaced, and not everything's on here. So I actually had to make a resume to even remember some of the characters that I played over time. And then I had to alphabetize it so I could find the stuff easily. It was really a mess. People say, "What about in Cyborg?" And I'm looking, going through page after page to try and find where Cyborg is to see what character I played. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff, and I I feel bad that people come up and they ask specific questions about things that you did. Now in episode 13 of Cyborg 006 at 20 minutes and 13 seconds, you said, and I'm going, huh? I did. Because you can't remember all this stuff. It's too many years. 40 years of stuff, it's a lot.
But no, it was definitely a fantastic series though. Cyborg 009 was amazing, and you and the actors across the board did a fantastic job
Thank
in that,
you.
in that series. And it was actually one of the few shows that premiered in Australia on Toonami on Cartoon Network back in the early 2000s.
Oh, it did.
So
Oh,
I
okay.
wouldn't be surprised if, like, at some point you come to Australia, you're going to get a lot of Cyborg 009 fans because the show was really popular back in the early 2000s. As well as that, there was another show that stood out to me that was one that you also started alongside with Brian Beacock and a lot of the other Bleach actors was Battle B Demand. That was also really popular in Australia back in the early 2000s as well.
Battle Biedemon, I played Battle Crow. See, I can tell you that because I have the resume here and I and it's alphabetized and I can find it really fast. I could not tell you what the voice was, unfortunately, because it's been too long. Um, but I had a tendency to get cast originally in mid-range voices, but as time went on, my voice got a little lower, and then I was starting to do these older guys, and so by the time we got to the Hokage, my voice was somewhere in here. Um, for Shun Sui, it was just my regular voice. I did notice though lately that Shun Sui aged as we went on. He didn't age much in the cartoon, but my voice aged so that he's got more texture in his voice now than he used to. Um, but you can't do all this screaming and carrying on without eventually it affecting your voice.
That's
I
true.
don't want, I hate to tell some of the young people that, that at some point they're not going to be able to do those young voices anymore. You don't sound like a 15-year-old. I'm sorry. That's the way it goes. One of my favorite series that I ever did was something that nobody seems to remember. And I thought it was hilarious. It was a series called Is No Good. It was Iznogoud, Is No Good. And I was the lead character, Is No Good. And I was an assistant to the Sultan of some weird made up country. And I was constantly trying to kill him. I was constantly trying to overthrow him so that I could be the Sultan. And it was like it was like uh, the word I want, the one with the wolf and what's the one where the wolf constantly gets beat up? He's trying the Roadrunner, Roadrunner and the wolf. It was that kind of thing. I'd come up with these elaborate plans to kill the Sultan, and it would all backfire on me. And my assistant was a character named uh, Adulafalat. We were supposed to be, like Middle Eastern something. It was Is No Good and Adulafalat, and he was my henchman. Was constantly trying to get the Sultan killed. There are shows like that I remember that I enjoyed so much when I was doing them. But the shows that most of the fans remember are the big ones. I worked on Transformers, uh, Digimon, uh, Robotech, all the like I said, Dragon Ball, Naruto, Sailor Moon, Cowboy Bebop. Shows like I did World of Warcraft. I've done several guest spots on World of Warcraft. So that I have done some games and stuff, particularly games that are associated with Naruto or Bleach or any of those. They have
Absolutely.
some, yeah.
No, that's fantastic though. And just talking a little bit more about with regards to Rurouni Kenshin, for instance. Now, as we know that last year we had the reboot series, which is meant to be following way closer to the source material, to the manga, versus what the series back in the 90s did. Was there ever any discussions about you coming back into Rurouni Kenshin, even to play a completely different character?
Not even. No one called me. Wait a minute. When did this happen? No, I was not called about that one. A friend of mine plays Kenshin, Richard Cancino. I'm just looking on my list here to see. Oh, it was under R. I'm looking under K. Yeah, yeah, really smart, Steve. It's Rurouni Kenshin, not Kenshin. Let me see who I played in there. Bear with me while I slide through my 8-page resume.
That's no problem
Yeah,
at all. That's
yeah, Dr. Gensai. Oh, that's right. Dr. Gensai, Shibumi, Jira, Jirakichi Ibisu. Ibisu. I don't know. What happens is you start working on these shows, and if it's a series in particular, they have you come in and do a particular character, but maybe you've got some extra time in the session, and they say, "Hey, can you pick up a couple of loops from this other character while you're doing it?" And after a while, you forget you've done so many.
that,
Um, on Power Rangers. Power Rangers was all voiceover stuff because the live action guys were, they did their own. So when we would go in, there would be, I called it Monster of the Week. You'd be working on this monster, but the next week there'd be another monster, and maybe they'd have you pick that one up too. So I did like 9 monsters, like 9 or 11 monsters on Power Rangers. Things like, and I decided to start printing up some of the prints for the fans. Robo Goat and Slippery Shark and Darkonda and people like that. Goofy monsters, but hey, they needed a voice. They
absolutely.
needed a voice that maybe wasn't as goofy as the monster.
Right, right. Well, I do remember like a lot of the characters that you played in across various shows that were typically thought of as just like one-off characters in a sense, but also along
Yeah.
the same time playing like main characters within those same shows, like Rurouni Kenshin being the one of the best examples, and of course a whole range of other stuff as well, which is just fantastic. But
Well, I was lucky, when I was doing this, I had a pretty good range for my voice. It's not as much of a range now. But I used to be able to get up in here, but I don't know if I could maintain that. And then I could get, somewhere in between there and one of these Jeep guys, the big heavy monster things. Uh, yeah, but the monsters themselves, you have to be careful because I've got friends that basically specialize in monsters, and that'll rip your throat up. You go in for a 2 or 3 hour session, and you walk out of there and you can't speak. There is nothing left. You have to go home and soak your throat in lemon juice and stuff. It's just, yeah, it's really tough. You have to be
I can
careful.
imagine that, but no, that's fantastic though. Now talking a little bit more about with regards to monsters. Now a couple of the roles that stood out to me, obviously as you mentioned about was of course Digimon, but you've also went on the other side of the equation to the Pokemon universe as well. Now, as many people will know that like there's been this whole debate that's been going on like Pokemon versus Digimon amongst the fandom for such a really long time just because of how big Pokemon and Digimon were back in the 90s and stuff. Like, like, how do you feel about like the whole having stepped into both sides of the digital monsters universe in Pokemon and Digimon? Like, how do you personally feel about like a lot of the debates on like, which is better aspect and all that kind of stuff?
That's an interesting question. I don't really have an opinion as to what if one series or another was better. There from the actor's point of view, it tends to be which was more fun to do. Was the character you were playing more fun to play in Pokemon or in Digimon if you happen to be in both series, which I did. It's been so long and so many voices that a lot of it starts to blur in your mind after a while. Sometimes I've had to go online to hear the voice to even remember what the voice was that I did. Um, yeah, so I tend not to choose one show over another. They were all interesting in their own way, and almost all of them paid me enough money to eat, so I felt like they were all important. If I get lunch, that's an important series.
That's definitely true in that regard. It's almost like it's like I've grown up watching like Digimon and Pokemon since like the early 2000s and stuff, having been a kid of the 90s, of having been like born in the 90s and stuff. So I was, and Pokemon being one of the first anime that I ever watched, and especially English dub as well. So that's where I started getting into watching a lot of dubbed anime at that stage, which I, for anyone out there that doesn't know, dubbed obviously meaning English speaking, sub meaning Japanese speaking, of course.
Yeah.
So, and I got into Digimon, I think, a little bit later down the track. And it's like, I enjoy both of them for completely different reasons. And I know there's like the whole, dub versus sub argument in the brand. I will say to all the listeners out there, whichever one you prefer, that's fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that at all.
Didn't they, wasn't Pokemon eventually originally done in English in some places?
Um, I,
Was
I'm
it
trying.
always Japanese into English?
I think it was always Japanese into English at the time, but I
Oh,
got into it around the somewhere in the late 90s, I think, when it came out in English around that time, of course. So I'm trying to look up on that a little bit. I know that it used to be in Japanese, and obviously when people think of Pokemon, it's obviously screened in English quite a fair bit. And so
yeah.
I'm just trying to think off the top of my head.
Are
Um,
you going to be one of those guys that when you come up and I say, well, how old were you when you started watching? Are you going to tell me 35?
No,
You were
I'm
six.
not, I'm not 35. I'm actually a little younger than that.
Okay.
31.
Okay, good. So were you six when you started watching it?
I was
Five,
just,
six?
I was a little kid when I first watched Pokemon at the time. I still remember
Yeah.
it quite vividly when obviously around that time before DVDs and before streaming services came into the picture and all that kind of stuff, we used to have VHS tapes or V's and
Oh,
VHS
yeah.
at that time.
I
And I remember
remember VHS tapes. I'm old enough to remember VHS tapes. I still have some. I can't play them. I've got shows on them and I can't, I don't have a VHS player anymore.
No, that's fantastic. But I still remember this one quite vividly, where it was like when I first got Pokemon, when I first discovered it, I was like, hey, this is cool. I'm going to watch this. And I opened up, and the tape was in yellow as a reference to Pikachu from the Pokemon series.
Oh,
Unfortunately, the tape didn't work so well, so I had to swap it in for another one, and that worked
wow.
just fine.
I'm not sure any of my VHSs would play now. I mean, they've been sitting, they might have crumbled into dust and I wouldn't even know, you know. I mean,
I
after VHS came discs, right? They
Yes,
went from that
yes.
to discs. Yeah, and you can still get discs and play and
I,
display.
I I still have a whole collection of DVDs on my shelf somewhere, and I still am able to play them like non-stop. I still buy DVDs to this day forward
Ah.
because I'm just that type of guy. It's like, yep, I know there's the streaming aspect for it. I know it's there and everything, but I
Yeah.
prefer this.
Yeah, well, you get to control it yourself. I mean, you can start, stop, and jump around if
Absolutely,
you want.
absolutely. Now,
Yeah.
speaking about, of course, just a few of the other roles, just a few of the other stuff here is that obviously, as we've spoken about a little bit, you've played it in Naruto, in Dragon Ball, in the Gundam universe, but also across in Sailor Moon, Ghost in the Shell, Cowboy Bebop, Lupin the Third, and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, as well as the Transformers universe. What was it like working across all these different shows and playing all these different characters?
Well, everything has its own challenges, when you go in. Um, I'm just looking here to see who I played in Transformers. Transformers was Cerebros Maximus REV. I still get people that are interested in some of those characters. Transformers seems to live on. It seems to have a hold on some of the fans that maybe more than some of the other series. I don't know. Um, I was forced to finally print up at least one print of one of those characters because I kept getting asked about it at conventions and stuff. Well, don't you have anything from? So I printed up Rev REV from Transformers so that I would have something, so that people wouldn't go away, disappointed when you're sitting there. Um, there's every show has its own challenges. Some shows are beautifully animated, some are not. Some are fairly crudely animated, and you do the best you can with all of that. I myself and the other actors that do this, we do take pride in trying to bring these characters to life in English. Um, most the fans will never hear the Japanese version of them. And when we're there, we listen to the Japanese to get a sense of where they're coming from. But the truth is that the Japanese intonations, the Japanese interpretations of the lines and stuff, they don't really mean a lot to the English actor when you're listening to it. You don't understand what they're saying. They have different rhythms to their speech, and sometimes you'll hear somebody going, and they're saying, "Hello, I have to go now." And you're going, "What? What was that? What was all that other stuff?" It's just a different approach all the time. I enjoyed most of the characters that I worked on. Most of the series I thought were interesting. Um, Coming from a perspective of being just an American actor uh, who was not that exposed to material from another country, it was interesting to me to see the material and where it came from and where what the sense was that they were going for when they made the stuff. You know, the one of the reasons anime became so popular, I think, is because there was a very particular point of view from the Japanese. They had a different sense of what they wanted to do with characters and with storylines and where these series were going. That was more interesting to the audience than maybe a number of American series would have been. People watch what they watch when they're young. The parents plop them down in front of the TV and they they turn on something and they go out of the room. And when you're a kid, this is what you've been told. This is what you're going to watch. For me, I was going to watch Bugs Bunny. I was going to watch Donald Duck. I was going to watch Mighty Mouse. Um, Nowadays, I think parents take more of an interest in what their kids are watching, maybe because the material isn't as innocent as the stuff that we were watching. I could watch The Roadrunner all day long. My father and mother would know that nothing really controversial was going to go on. you know, Somebody's going to get hit with a hammer. Some bomb's going to blow up in somebody's face, and the face is going to turn black. Nothing bad's going to happen to them. But in anime, there's more reality involved. When the bomb goes off, somebody gets killed. Somebody gets hurt. Um, that's
Absolutely.
different from what I grew up with.
Absolutely. And especially thinking back to like a lot of the cartoons and stuff that I watched from like in the late 90s and the early 2000s and stuff was like, and I still watch that stuff to this day forward because they're classics for a reason. But now looking across at like a lot of the stuff that has come out in the last few years, like obviously like the PG-13 stuff to America, which is M to Australia, of course. Like,
Yeah, of
yeah, a lot of that stuff is like, yeah, my parents would never let me watch this when I was younger, and now it's
course not.
like
Yeah, it's somewhat adult. It's not adult material like sex and stuff, but there's adult
themes in there.
echoes. There's adult themes. There's violence that's not cartoon kind of violence. People get hurt, people get killed. Uh, you
Absolutely.
know, in the Roadrunner, when the bomb goes off, the Wile E. Coyote's sitting there with smudge on his face. He didn't get hurt. He just got smudged. The bomb goes off in anime, people get killed. That's a different approach to cartoons.
Absolutely. No, that's definitely true in that regard. And actually, speaking about, of course, with Transformers, as just mentioning that before, my question to the listeners out there, and as we know, we're going to be getting a live action Transformers G.I. Joe crossover movie. But to the listeners out there, let me know in the comments below, what do you want to see them do with the Transformers in the future? Do you want to see them do like another anime related series? And leave a like or a comment if you really want to see Steve Kramer make a Stanley cameo in the live action Transformers movies. That would be so fantastic.
They won't know who in the heck Steve Kramer is. He was the voice of what? That was cartoons. This is live action. Another story entirely. I still audition for live action stuff. I just had one yesterday, I think I auditioned for. Nowadays, all that stuff happens at home. They don't they don't even bring you into the casting director's office anymore because that's the fallout from COVID. But I still get called sometimes, and I have to. I set up. I do it on my phone. I have a whole setup with a ring light and all of that, and a stand, and I sit there, and I hardly ever memorize because my memory's fakakta. And so what I do is I tape the lines to the stand where I'm reading them. You know, try to look away so it doesn't look like I'm reading stuff. Uh, but I still, I still audition for live action stuff
Well,
if they'll have me.
fingers crossed.
Yeah, I'm not dead yet.
But no, that would be amazing though. And speaking about, of course, with live action adaptations, now as we know, we've been getting a lot of live action adaptations of anime in the last couple of years. And especially a lot of them with One Piece in particular, now starting to sort of break the curse a little bit. And reportedly, there's a lot of other anime adaptations coming down the track. There's such a live action Naruto movie and reportedly a live action Bleach movie under Warner Brothers. What has been your opinion about a lot of live action adaptations of not just anime, but a lot of video game properties as well in the last few years?
Well, I think it's great that there's enough of an interest in the audience, and obviously the big production companies are taking note of this. You know, they aren't working in a vacuum. They're out there testing the waters and trying to see what the audience is interested in. They wouldn't do a live action Bleach or anything else if there wasn't a potentially great audience for it. So I think it's wonderful. I think it's great that we came along and were able to make a product that was so popular that it carried on past us. You know, I mean the Bleach is if they do a live action thing, if they do a live action of any of these anime shows, I think that's great that that the material was received was popular enough in the reception of it that people would want to go ahead and see a live action version. I will say this: I'm not so sure that these shows translate very well into live action because it's anime and there's craziness going on, and there's a lot of violence and stuff. And maybe the violence, when you see it on screen as live action, affects you differently than if you see it as a cartoon. That's you know kids have a maybe a different capacity for watching this kind of stuff, live action versus animation. Yeah.
That's true. But hey, if they can manage to do a live action One Piece series last year, and of course getting ready for season two, and do it to the level that they have, and especially One Piece being like one of the most ridiculous anime you can imagine on screen for that matter, then anything is totally possible. Anything is totally possible.
What's weird is I didn't even know about One Piece until maybe a year or two ago. We had done over 750 Naruto episodes, and I thought that was incredible. And then I heard that we weren't even the champions, that One Piece had over 1,000 episodes, and they're still doing them.
Yep.
So that may never be matched again. I had never seen One Piece. I because it was done not in Los Angeles. I can't remember exactly where they recorded it. Do you remember where it's been recorded?
I think it might have been recorded up in Dallas, I think, because I know a lot of the actors that are part of the series are based around in Dallas, I think.
They're in Dallas. Okay.
I'm assuming so anyway. Don't take my
It
word for
wouldn't
it, though.
surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me because so many of the production companies picked up and left LA. So it wouldn't surprise me at all that it was being done initially in Dallas or even Atlanta or one of those places. Yeah, I have some friends and acquaintances who have moved out of Los Angeles because they still want to do the work and they can't find enough work here. So they've moved to Atlanta or Dallas or one of those other places where there's still production going on.
Right.
Follow the follow the work.
That's it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
no, that's fantastic though. And and hey, and another question to the listeners out there, let me know in the comments. Get Steve Kramer into One Piece, and who do you want to see him play in the One Piece series
It's not
once they get to dubbing the anime, get back into dubbing the anime. That would be
that
amazing.
I don't know if they would ever do that because they're never going to, I don't think they're ever going to come to LA to do it. And they're never going to fly me to Dallas to record a character. That's not saving them any money. So that becomes like a bottom line thing, you know?
That would be pretty amazing though. That would be
Yeah.
absolutely fantastic. Now, of course, going on to Bleach with a huge congratulations on the Thousand Year Blood War series. How did it feel stepping into the world of Bleach for the first time, but especially coming back through the revival series after all that time when we thought we were never going to get any more Bleach series?
Yeah, it was a pleasant surprise to find out that we were doing it again. That there was more stuff. I mean, it obviously that meant it was popular enough to warrant doing more, more episodes. Um, it's sort of a gift that came out of nowhere. Uh, you enjoy doing the character when you're doing it, and then suddenly it's over. For it to come back, it's like you're seeing an old friend walked into your room again. So it's fun that way. I enjoy seeing how the characters have evolved. You know, I think Shunsui, I was told, releases his Bankai in this next incarnation of Bleach. So it's I'm looking forward to seeing how they handle that. How it's going to come out.
Well, absolutely looking forward to it though. And based on the footage that I've seen from the revival series and having watched the original animated show, which you and the actors across the board did a fantastic job and still do an amazing job in the series without question. It's been absolutely amazing. And based on the stuff I've seen from the revival series, it just looks absolutely beautiful and everything. And I know there's been a lot of talk going about of them wanting to do a remake of the original animated series as well at in conjunction with the revival series.
Oh, really?
How do you personally feel about anime being remade to newer animation styles? And what anime have you worked on personally that you feel like could translate really well into like a reboot or remake kind of context?
Well, I mean, almost any of the major series that I worked on probably could be remade if they wanted to. Um, I'm when you say remade, I mean the redoing the original storylines and everything.
Yes,
See,
and with
I would rather see them come up with new storylines rather than spend the time recreating what we had already done. Um, maybe they're thinking of doing that to upgrade to more modern animation techniques or whatever, but um, we've got it, and people, the audience can still access it. I mean, it's still available. So why redo what's still available to an audience? Why not go on and take the characters and come up with something new?
absolutely.
I know some of the original creators in Japan have started to die off, uh, which is sad. But I think there's enough. What's the word I want? There's enough originality. There's enough creativity so that they could come up with a new and better version, or maybe it's not going to be better, but a newer version of these
Mm,
series. And take these characters and take them somewhere they haven't been before. You know,
absolutely. And
don't just go back to the same old plot lines and all that.
absolutely. And I know for a fact that the author of the manga himself, Tite Kubo, is still obviously being involved in in the manga and coming up with new stories and everything. And he's been talking quite a fair bit about the Bleach series and stuff and everything. And also this year marking the 20th anniversary of the Bleach franchise and stuff.
Right,
So
right.
yeah, I think that's where all that remake stuff started happening, especially because of this year marking the same thing happening with One Piece because of the 25th anniversary, and people saying, let's give it the One Piece treatment where we remake the entire thing with newer animation. Like
Hmm.
anything's possible. Anything is totally
Yeah,
possible.
yeah. Hmm.
But but no, that's but absolutely fantastic though. And final question, what do you think Shunsui would say if he was in Australia?
First thing he'd say was, "How in the hell did I get here?" And what are you guys planning for me? Watch it. I still have my swords, and I ain't afraid to use them.
No, that's absolutely fantastic.
Well, it's a pleasure talking to you. I
That's
enjoyed it.
absolutely. Steve Kramer, thank you so much. It has been an absolute honor.
Oh well, I don't want to think that it was an honor to speak to me. I don't I don't have that big an opinion of myself, but it was fun anyway.
It,
I
well,
enjoyed it.
it was an honor to me and an honor to everyone out there, of course.
Well,
So
I hope your audience enjoyed it.
absolutely. And is there anything you would like to say to the fans out there in Australia and in the world?
Just we appreciate all the people that do this stuff. Appreciate the audience, the people that are watching it. We appreciate your interest in the thing and your devotion to the characters and the shows. We worked pretty hard on them, and we didn't even do the original stuff. We didn't do the hard work of animating the stuff and coming up with the original storylines and all of that. But we did work hard to make the shows accessible to an English audience and to make them entertaining. And so it is comforting to us to see that people enjoy that. And you know, I and if you find out that I'm going to be in your neighborhood in a convention, come by and say hi. Say we heard you on Simon's show, and we'd heard enough. But thank you for talking. But now shut up.
But no, that's absolutely fantastic, though. Well, guys, if you'd like to know more about Steve Kramer, you can check out the Bleach Thousand Year Blood War Revival series, which you can check out on any of your local streaming services. Don't forget to like, subscribe, check out the links below, and don't forget to comment below what is your favorite role of Steve Kramer's. Thank you all so much for listening. This is Simon and Steve Kramer signing off. Bye for
So
now.
long now.